Hello, thank you for joining tonight's webinar announcing the launch of the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry. I'm Jan Rock with the DCM Foundation and the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium, and I will be your host tonight. And let's get started. Next slide. Just a reminder that all participant microphones are muted so that we can hear tonight's presenters. Next slide. We will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of tonight's presentations, so please submit your questions into the Q&A feature at the bottom of Zoom at any time during the webinar tonight, and we will get to them at the end. Next slide. Again, I just want to mention we have 438 people registered for tonight's webinar, so there is a huge amount of interest. We'd like to know first, who is attending tonight's webinar? What best describes you? Are you a cardiomyopathy patient, a family member or friend, medical professional, or industry professional? Just give a minute here. Excellent. Oh, those numbers are actually quite interesting. If we can end the poll and share the results. So 41% are patients, 17% family member or friend, 17% are medical professionals, and 26% are industry professionals. So we have a tremendous amount of industry and medical interest in this topic tonight. So let's get rolling. First, I just want to tell people briefly about GCAC, the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium. If you're not familiar with it, the DCM Foundation created GCAC and launched it in March of 2023, along with 7 other cardiomyopathy patient groups, all working together to help improve the awareness of the important role genetics plays in cardiomyopathy. And we've really pushed the ball forward quite significantly since that time. And tonight's registry launch announcement is a big piece of that. Next slide. First, I want to make a quick note that our recorded webinars are now available in more than 100 languages. If you go to our archived webinars on the GCAC website, which is geneticcardiomyopathy.org, or on the dcmfoundation.org website, you will see instructions how to translate any of our videos into your language, just with the click of a few buttons. And what's really fantastic is this helps us continue to improve and push forward our health equity. We, of course, launched both a Spanish version of the DCM Foundation website last year, as well as a full Spanish version of the GCAC website last year. And this ability to have recorded webinars available in more than 100 languages allows us to continue to improve health equity for all cardiomyopathy patients. Next slide. So a quick overview of our agenda tonight. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but obviously we're talking about what is the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry. We're going to go over an understanding of it, what data is collected, how is it used, and how is your data protected, and how do I participate and why. Next slide. Tonight's speakers, first we have Greg Roof, the Executive Director of the DCM Foundation and GCAC, our fearless leader. We have Dr. Kathy Crispell with us. She is the DCM Foundation Board President, and she is the Principal Investigator of the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry. And we also have our new team member, Shauna Plank. She is the Manager of the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry. Next slide. What is a medical research registry? It might be obvious, but I want to review briefly and how this is a little different tonight, what we're talking about with the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry. The purpose of most is to collect and store data on individuals with or at risk of various genetic conditions. The uses can range from research and clinical care to drug development. Benefits obviously are to advance knowledge and improve treatments. And considerations include privacy, informed consent. You want to make sure as a patient that you are fully informed and understanding the registry that you're participating in and any potential risks or benefits. There are many examples of disease-specific registries out there, like the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry, as well as other medical research registries like ClinGen and so forth. What's really important here is to note that most medical research registries will do their own research using the data collected in the registry. We will be doing something different. We are not going to be doing our own research, and stay tuned because Greg and others will be talking in more detail about that tonight. Next slide. So without further ado, I would first like to introduce Greg Roof, Executive Director of DCMF and GCAC. Thanks, Greg. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Jan, and would love to thank everyone involved in putting this webinar on. Jan, Kathy, Shauna, and Nikki Buddy in the marketing behind the scenes. I think Jan mentioned very early on that we had 438 registrants for this webinar. I'm extremely excited. Obviously a very hot topic. And we hope to do it justice this evening and give you the information you need and answer any questions that you may have. One thing that we really want to try to do in this webinar tonight is really explain, as Jan just mentioned, what do most medical research registries look like, and then explain what the genetic cardiomyopathy is designed to do. We think it's really, really important that you have as much information as possible and are as informed as possible on whether you want to participate in our registry or other registries. The more knowledge we can give you, I think the better off you will be both now and in the future. So the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry, we put this together to empower eligible people to participate in a registry so that we can better advance research and ultimately find effective treatments and potential cures for genetic cardiomyopathy, which we all know is a very devastating disease. It's targeted to the registry is targeted for individuals with or at risk of genetic cardiomyopathy. It's sponsored by the DCM Foundation and its partners to the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium. And again, I would like to take a second and thank all of our wonderful partners in the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium. Without your promotion, without your help, there is no way that we could have the success that we're having in helping patients. The registry is actually hosted by NORD on their IAMRARE platform. And what we're trying to accomplish is identifying patients and family members with genetic cardiomyopathy to participate in potential research and clinical trials, research studies and clinical trials, and also by participating to learn about potential life-saving therapies. The GCR, or the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry, will not be conducting any research on its own on the data that's collected. We will basically make the information available to qualified researchers and pharma biotech companies based on the participants' consent. Consent is a big deal. Kathy and Sean are going to go a lot through that. But again, your information by participating will never, ever be sent to anyone without your expressed written consent. Next slide, please. So why did we create the GCR? Again, it's basically to identify genetic cardiomyopathy patients and families who'd be willing to participate in medical research studies. Increasing the number of identified patients will encourage more researchers and pharma biotech companies to investigate the disease. So we believe by actually getting more people registered and available, it will entice academic researchers and entice pharma biotech companies to actually explore research and develop potential therapies in this. So it's sort of like build it and they will come. We've seen that in a lot of different disease states, and we think that that will happen here. Also, genetic cardiomyopathy is a very complicated disease. And to better understand this disease, more patients and family members need to be identified with both their genetic and medical information. For instance, like my family, you may have, say, siblings. So I had the lamin A gene. I got sick and was transplanted. My sister, 2 years older, has the same gene and is perfectly fine. So we need to have a lot of people, especially multiple family members with the same gene, to better understand what triggers it. Why does one person get sick and why does another person not? Again, we need massive amounts of people to participate to be able to help find and uncover the complexities of this disease. Next slide, please. So it's been a really, really long journey and a very rigorous journey in creating the GCR. We basically started in early 2000, really the beginning of 2023, and started reaching out to all the people that we knew that would be potential candidates for hosting a genetic cardiomyopathy registry or be our partner. We spent a year investigating many different platform providers. At the end of 2023, December 2023, we actually signed with Nord, IAMRARE platform, which I just mentioned before. And in the last year, we've been working with Nord on a weekly basis, 3 or 4 of us, a great team from Nord, 5 or 6 people we work with there for training, to create all of our materials, to get IRB approval. The registry that we're doing actually has medical approval. And we put in hundreds and hundreds of hours to make this registry successful and to have a successful launch. Next slide, please. So real quick, you're probably asking to talk about Nord's hosting this on their IAMRARE platform. Who is Nord? So Nord is an independent nonprofit. And it's leading the fight to improve lives of rare disease patients and families by supporting the rare community, its people and organizations. Again, it's a nonprofit organization. Specific purpose is to help find cures for rare disease. Love the mission, love the organization. Nord works together to accelerate research, raise awareness, and provide valuable information and drive public policy that benefits the estimated 25 to 30 million Americans impacted by rare diseases. And there you can see, if you'd like to learn more about Nord, you see their URL. Next slide, please. So again, genetic cardiomyopathy. Cardiomyopathy is a big disease. So why are we working with Nord and why are we calling this a rare disease? So let's do a little bit of math. First, it's estimated that 2 to 2.5 million people in the US have cardiomyopathy. And we know that up to half of those have some type of genetic cardiomyopathy causing the disease. And so that's about 1 to 1.25 million people. These aren't rare diseases. They're too big for rare diseases. But we know that there are 60 plus genes that have been identified that can cause cardiomyopathy. So if you look at that 1 to 1.25 and maybe even 1 to 1.5 million people, and you split it down into 60 different types of genes, it thus becomes genetic cardiomyopathy, becomes a rare disease. And I can give you an example of this in the next slide. Next slide, please. So here's Dr. Hirschberger on our board, co-founder, helped, was a big part of creating this diagram that shows genetic cardiomyopathy gene mutations. And another question that's asked, and you can see all the different genes, why are we representing all types of cardiomyopathy? So we're representing dilated, hypertrophic, arrhythmogenic, all the different types of cardiomyopathy. The reason being, when you look at cardiomyopathy from a genetic basis, it's not just DCM, HCM, ACM, LVNC, right? Restrictive or peripartum cardiomyopathy. There's an interplay. So you can look, for instance, at hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and you can look at the interplay. Somebody could have a certain gene and it could develop into hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Another person, it could develop into dilated cardiomyopathy. The same with ARVC, which they now call ACM, arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy. So when we look at genetic cardiomyopathy, we really have to look at it on a cardiomyopathy-wide basis. And my belief is in the future, channelopathies will become part of that too. Next slide. Again, why are we doing this? Why did we create GCAC, the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Campaign and Consortium, and the GCR, the registry? Because again, the problem is, we've mentioned before, up to 50% of people with cardiomyopathy, estimated, 2.5 million, half of that, 1.25 million, have genetics are causing their cardiomyopathy. But in the United States right now, and 2 or 3, 4 studies have shown this, academic studies have shown this, that only about 1% of the people get genetically tested. We first of all have to get the people registered that have been tested. The second, we have to get more people tested that we're working on and we'll tell you about later in the spring. So the solution with GCAC and the GCR is we believe with this campaign and the registry that we'll be able to save many lives of both patients and family members, and also, as I mentioned before, help increase the pace of cardiomyopathy genetic research and potential new life-saving therapies. Next slide, please. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Kathy Purcell, which many of you have probably seen in a number of our webinars, and she is the GCR principal investigator. She'll tell you all about that. Kathy, thanks so much for your help on this, and thanks for joining us this evening.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for the nice introduction, Greg. Well, this is very exciting, and I'm so pleased to be with all of you tonight. And I'm going to begin by first describing or defining for you what a principal investigator is. The principal investigator, or PI is the abbreviation, is the person who is responsible for the execution and management of the registry. And responsibilities of the principal investigator include data analysis, reporting the data, compliance with regulations, and I think most importantly, they're responsible for the safety and protection of the registry participants. Next slide, please. So what kind of data are we collecting? Well, we are collecting data in the form of surveys, or questionnaires is another term to be used, and we have about 4 surveys in the registry that you will fill out, or the participant will fill out, that provides the information that we're collecting. They are broken down into categories. One category is that we will be collecting genetic cardiomyopathy information. So if you know what kind of variant or mutation you have, you will be you will come to a question with a drop-down list of many known variants that lead to cardiomyopathy, and hopefully you'll find yours and you'll just check it. Or if you have multiple variants, you will check those. If you have a genetic report, we want to see that as well. So you have the option of uploading your genetic report as well, or multiple reports if you have a new report in the future, let's say, after you've entered initially. We also collect some basic information about your medical history and some diagnostic information, and information about treatments and disease status or disease progression. That's basically assessed by what kind of treatments you may have, such as if you have certain kinds of devices. Or another question will be, how many times have you been hospitalized in the last year? Again, a drop-down list will come. And if that's been 0, then you mark 0. And then we will follow that over time. So we plan on doing annual surveys so that we can track information over time. We also collect information on sociodemographics. The demographic information is pretty standard. But the socioeconomic information includes like your level of education, your income level. Again, there will be drop-down choices for you. And you might ask, well, why are you collecting that information? And the reason why we're collecting that information is, we are interested in trying to identify underserved or higher risk communities, and that information may help us with that. And if we do identify any of those communities, then we hopefully can help participate in solving for why those communities are underserved. So you always have the option of not answering those questions, and that will always be a choice for you. So there is a prefer not to answer option for any of those questions. If you go through all the 4 surveys, it will take about 30 minutes for someone to go through all the surveys. We've tried to make it as simple and as easy for the participant as possible. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about how your data is used. When you register, you will have the option to opt in to be notified of research studies and clinical trials that match your profile. Qualified medical researchers and investigators doing clinical trials that are in the genetic cardiomyopathy space may reach out to the GCR for potential access to matching participants in the GCR to their research. Next slide, please. But first, the participant must consent to having the GCR collect their information. And this is an example of the end part of the adult consent form. And I'm not going to read everything that's on this page. I'm just going to point out a couple of important things. The first thing is that the consent forms are web-based. And to provide consent, you will need to provide a digital signature. And that signature is just as valid as if you had signed with a pen on paper. So that's one thing. The other thing is, after you've gone through the consent form and your questions have been asked and you feel satisfied with providing your consent, then you have to check these two items here. That you acknowledge this. Remember, this is the adult consent form, that you're 18 years of age and have read the consent and authorization form, etc. And that you understand the purpose and the risks of participation. And then you have to consent the next item or check the next item as well. If you do not check those boxes, you have not completed the consent process. So it's very important that you understand what you're reading and what you're consenting to. We don't want you to consent if you're unsure, if you have questions that aren't answered. We want you to feel confident in consenting. I will be very honest. The consent forms are long. They're not the easiest to read. Some people may be able to read them in one setting and have all their questions and concerns answered. Some people may need to read them through 2 or 3 sessions, or go and ask somebody that they trust or they have confidence in that about their opinion about this, the consents. So, whatever makes you confident and satisfied, that's what you need to do to consent. Once you have completed the consent form, here you will see that there is a box at the bottom where it are the opt-ins. And these are choices, and you can check one or none or all of them. But basically, you're telling us that you want more information about these topics. And the last item here in this opt-in box is interest in hearing about other relevant research studies and clinical trials from the DCM Foundation. So if you check that box, you are giving us, the GCR staff, the the permission to basically act as matchmakers to kind of match up your profile to the appropriate researchers. So it's very important, if you want that done, that you check that box. The other important thing before we go on to the next slide is that there is another consent form, and it's for minors and for adults who have a caregiver or cannot provide consent themselves because perhaps of a disability. And you'll learn a little bit more about that later in the webinar. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about how the data is used, how your data are used. So as I mentioned, potential researchers and people conducting clinical trials will reach out to the GCR manager and express interest in accessing the information or the data that's in the registry. The GCR manager and the PI, myself, will determine if that researcher or investigator is acceptable to partner with. Now, what does that mean? That means that we're going to see if that's somebody that's reputable, they come from a reputable institution, that they're doing reputable and ethical research. So we will do that work. Then if we agree they're acceptable to partner with, we will search the database, and the database will be searched only by certified GCR staff for matching participants. And if the participant has opted in, that little box that I showed previously, opted in and matches with a researcher, then the GCR manager will reach out and notify the participant of opportunities to join that research, or to at minimum learn more about it, and the opportunity perhaps for them to participate in those research endeavors. Next slide, please. So who has access to the data in the GCR? So all the data, including the protected health information, will be stored in a password protected secure server. Before we go on, let me define what protected health information is. This is very important for participants to understand. Protected health information is any information that can be used to identify a specific person. So that could be a name, it could be an address, it could be a birth date, it could be health record number, it could be insurance policy number. So anything that can be backtracked to a specific person is protected health information. So who has access to that information and all the other information? Well, approved members of the GCR team who have received training and certification in good clinical practice for social and behavioral research. Currently, that's myself and the GCR manager. Now, NORD also has access to these data, but under a couple of conditions. The first condition is that if we need technical support from them, remember we are on their platform, then they may need to get in and they may have access to all the data, including PHI, to be able to provide us that technical support. The other condition in which NORD has access to those data is if they want to do and conduct their own approved research using our registry data. So if they want to do research on genetic cardiomyopathy, then they, by agreement with them, they have the ability to get in and have access to the data. At this time, I'm not aware of any plans from NORD having any plans to do that. Regardless, in all cases, your privacy will be protected. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about data privacy. One of the things that the GCR registry will have is an advisory board. And this advisory board is made up of respected, recognized physician scientists who actually have expertise within the domain of genetic cardiomyopathy. And they provide an oversight function. So they will evaluate all requests for data from researchers or people who are requesting to have access to data. And that's a really great function because they're providing oversight really to myself and to the GCI manager to make sure that we have vetted people properly and that we have plans to do the appropriate thing with the data. So there is that oversight that's built in. Researchers will only be provided the minimum data necessary to accomplish their research study goals. Data containing PHI will only be shared if the research cannot be done without it and if the participant agrees to it, okay? The researchers will be required to sign a confidentiality agreement in which they promise to keep your information safe. Next slide, please. So how is the data secured? Well, the registry follows strict government guidelines to assure that the participants' information is protected. The platform is served over HTTPS, which means that data is encrypted when being sent from the user's browser to the Nord servers. The data are also kept encrypted in the Nord database. Communications between the registry platform application server and the database are also encrypted. As with any electronic information that you provide to anybody, there is a small chance that your privacy could be compromised. However, the registry and the security measures minimize the chance of this occurring. Next slide, please. And finally, it is important for me to provide a financial disclosure to all potential participants. The GCR will be charging researchers and investigators doing clinical trials for access to the registry data. And that is the way that the DCM Foundation and the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium, who are the sponsors to the registry, that is a way for them to generate revenue to maintain, support, and periodically upgrade the GCR. You know, we do expect that over time, there will have to be upgrades to the GCR. We also, as I mentioned previously, you know, we will be doing or asking the participants to be filling out surveys on an annual basis, and that will require management as well. So we need revenue to be able to do those things. Patients will never be charged for participating in the GCR, and that's something very important for all potential participants to understand. I hope this has been helpful, and with that, I will hand it over to our GCR manager, Shauna Plank.
Kathy, thank you so much for the nice introduction and for setting up the topic so nicely. So, hi everybody, I'm Shauna Plank. I'm very excited, as Jay had mentioned at the top of the hour, that I'm new to the team, and so I'm just very happy to be here and serve as the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry Manager. It's really great to be here, and what an exciting time. So I've received the certification that Kathy just spoke of, the good clinical practice for social and behavioral research. So as Kathy mentioned, in this role, I am one of the few people who will be able to access the database and of course work very closely with Kathy along the way. So at this time, I'll transition more into the logistics of the registry. I'll walk you through how to register, what it looks like, what that process entails. So if we go to the next slide, you will see here that there is the website www.geneticcardiomyopathy.org. So on that website, there is a button. It's a new button at the top right. I'll show you a screenshot here shortly that says join the registry. So that's the fastest and most direct way to get there. We'll also have a QR code displayed near the end of the presentation that you can scan to get there as well. On the next slide, we have some items that will help you be really set up for success. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So there's some information that you'll need to complete your registration. And Kathy went over very nicely some of these items, but we really just want to make sure that you're set up for success so that when you sit down, if you decide to join the registry, you have everything that you need right in front of you. So the first thing is about 20 to 30 minutes of time. Kathy outlined the type of data that will be asked for you to enter as you register. And so that does take a little bit of time. You are able to, during the process, step away, save the work that you've done so far, and come back to complete it at a later time if needed. But we do encourage you to complete it at one time if you can, just for consistency. Number two, if available, a copy of your genetic testing results would be very helpful. So the questionnaires or surveys within the IAMRARE platform will guide you through how to redact private information, because there might be some information on your genetic testing results that is not relevant to the registry. So there's a very clear guide of what to black out or redact before you upload a copy to the registry database. Number three is an understanding of which cardiomyopathy diagnosis you or the participant you're completing the information for has, whether it's hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, restrictive cardiomyopathy, others, and there is an option to select more than one if the participant does have more than one diagnosis. And lastly, you'll need some basic information. Kathy mentioned maybe socioeconomic, and then some stuff that you might find on your birth certificate, like your city or county of birth as well, would be helpful to have in front of you before you log in to register. So with that, let's go to the next slide. And this is the screenshot I mentioned. So when you go to geneticcardiomyopathy.org, there's that button that we've highlighted in blue at the top right that says join the registry. That's the button that you want. That means you're in the right place. And if for some reason you don't see it, you could try an incognito browser or clear your cookies, and then you'll certainly be able to see it. So on the next slide, you'll see the following page. So you'll hit join the registry, and let's go to the next slide. And then it will pop up to this page. So this is really the registry kind of home page, join the registry page. So you'll see at the bottom there are two options. The first is on the left, sign up for the registry. That's when you're a first-time user and you haven't created an account yet. That's where you want to go. Once you have created an account, you can always access your information by going to the button on the right if we're already registering and logging in here. But to start, you'll hit sign up for the registry. And if you go to the next slide, please, you'll see where that will take you. So there will be a shift. If you're watching the URL, you will shift over to the IAMRARE platform. That's the NORD platform we've been talking about. And this is the first thing you'll see the first time you click that. So there are two options when creating your account. On the left, you see the participant account. So you have a rare disease condition and or a diagnosis. And on the right is the caregiver account. So I am a family member or a guardian of someone with a rare disease. And note that the verbiage may change slightly as the IAMRARE platform is updated down the road, but these two types of accounts should remain. And if you're not sure, maybe you fit into both buckets. The bottom right button where it says not sure, help me choose, will walk you through which type of account is most appropriate for you. So I do recommend going to that if you're not sure, and then it will guide you, and then you can come back to this screen and select the type of account that you would like to create. And then we'll go to the next slide. Once you do that, you'll have this, you kind of see 5 steps or circles along the middle there. And those are the initial steps just to get an account with your email address within the IAMRARE platform. So this part's pretty fast. This is not the medical information section. This, you can review the terms and conditions for the platform, provide some contact information, which is really just your name and email address, and then opt in or out of notifications, and then basically submit it. So this part's pretty straightforward. What you'll get then is an email for the email address that you provided with a unique hyperlink that says, hey, click this hyperlink and set up a password. And that's where you will follow those steps and then go in and add the additional medical information that Kathleen nicely outlined. And that's where you'll want to have all of that paperwork that I mentioned kind of ready to go on your desk in front of you before you complete that. So let's go to the next slide here, because we want to make sure you're not alone. So if those steps, we've worked really hard to make them pretty clear and concise and straightforward, but of course you might have questions or it doesn't work the way you expect it to. So we have an email address. This will also be available on the registry website that we shared, and also in the webinar follow-up email that will come out to you. Patient questions at geneticcardiomyopathy.org. We'll be checking that regularly. Happy to walk through anything with you. If you have technical questions or other questions about the registry, we can support you that way and make sure that your question gets to the right person, and Kathy and I will be monitoring that to help as well. One thing to note is once we have your email address, we definitely don't intend to blast you with emails. We don't want you to worry about that. But as Kathy mentioned, annually there will be an update, so that would be a push to your email. And then also we can see, hey, maybe you started and completed 60% of the information, but not the last 40%. We may reach out to you and say, hey, do you have any questions? Is there anything we can do to answer those for you to see if you want to complete the remaining 40% as you opt in? And with that, I just want to again remind you that you're not alone. We're here to help and answer any questions that you have via email. And with that, I will hand it off to Greg, who's going to walk through what you might see after this webinar to get the word out about the registry. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy and Shauna. I think that's great information, very informative. One quick thing, if you have questions, if you see a Q&A button at the end, please feel free to type in any question that you have. There's been a lot of great questions so far. I think we're going to answer all live that come in. And if we go a few minutes late, those that are on that want to jump off at the top of the hour, great. But we would love to be able to stick on and answer any questions that you have and go a few minutes late if necessary. So you'll be seeing, starting tomorrow, the GCR social media promotion. And you can see what it'll look like. It's very simple. If you want to participate, you simply, there'll be a link associated with the social media ad, and click on it and actually register. If you know of people that are that you think might be interested, family members, friends, people that you know, you're in a Facebook group, you're in whatever, that may have genetic cardiomyopathy, we really hope that you would push it to them, forward it to them, and post it to your social media channels to help us make the GCR as successful as possible. Next slide, please. Again, we need your help, and why you should participate. As I mentioned before, we think that patients are a great source to help drive research and potential life-saving therapies. And by participating, you can be part of the solution for this. As mentioned above in the slides before, we know that about 50% of cardiomyopathy is genetic, but only 1% of patients are being genetically tested. We're working and hope to come to you in 3 or 4 months with great genetic testing solutions. But in the meantime, we definitely want to register as many people that have been tested as possible today. Genetic cardiomyopathy is a complex disease, and it requires more participation to unravel the genetic and medical reasons behind this disease. As mentioned before, you may have multiple people in your family that have the same mutation, very similar lifestyles, same basic genetic code. Some people get very sick, some people do not. Why is that? We need to have many more people available for research studies and clinical trials to help solve that problem. We want to increase the speed of this. Those of us that have disease and have family members, it's very important that we speed progress so that ourselves and our loved ones don't get sick. Next slide, please. So the benefits of participating in the GCR, one, if you've seen our campaigns before for GCAC, you see that the reasons that we think people participate is because of myself, my family, and my legacy. And when you look at myself, why would you want to participate? Again, you could be made aware of potential research or life-saving therapies very quickly. My family, I know at least in my case with my family, I will do anything I can not to let my kids or grandkids get sick, and my nephews, my sister. So it's very important to me that I do all I can to help protect our loved ones. And obviously by participating in something like this, you could be a benefit. And then also my legacy. I look at my life, good and bad things I've done, and I certainly would love to have a legacy of participating in something like this to help not only myself, my family, but my community, and to give back to the world. And last but not least, the bottom, participating will also potentially help you be identified or notified more quickly for any life-saving therapies that are coming to market. Next slide, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg, Shauna, Kathy. We are going to open up the Q&A session now. We have a number of great questions that have already come in. And so if everybody wants to come back on camera and turn on their mics, and let's get to a few of these questions. The first question that came in, I'm in Australia. This one, I think, Greg, is for you. I'm in Australia, and I struggle to find cardiologists that know about the lamin A gene mutation. So far, there are, I think, 11 of us with the gene mutation. Will there be anyone in Australia being involved?
We'd love for you to participate. Anybody from around the world can participate. We are targeting the US originally, but it is open, and we have the medical permissioning globally for anyone to participate around the world. One thing we didn't mention is all of our information is in both English and Spanish. We are just launching the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Registry in English because we thought it would be too complicated with dual languages, because always the first few months, the bumps of any technical launch, we want to do it in just one language. But our goal is to have this a Spanish version available in potentially more languages, Spanish mid-year, and hopefully more languages after that. Real quick, if you're not a member of Laminae Facebook group or laminaecardiac.org, I strongly suggest that you join those groups. I'm a Laminae patient, and they're very, very helpful. Shauna is a Laminae patient. They're very, very helpful for Laminae patients.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. So a couple of people have questions about genetic testing and the button that says, if you'd like to get genetic testing done. Greg, what's the best way for them to, you want to talk just quickly about if somebody's interested in getting genetic testing? And also there's a question, if they haven't received genetic testing, but they want to participate in the registry. Maybe that's for Kathy.
Yeah, good, Kathy. I'll answer the first, and Kathy, you answer the second. So getting genetically tested in the United States is a little bit complicated, and so and can be expensive. It just depends on your insurance, depending on your healthcare provider, whatever. So if you would like to get tested today, I would recommend that you reach out to your healthcare provider and ask about genetic testing if they can do it. If they can't, again, as I mentioned before, we will be announcing in 3 to 4 months a program that we think will be very, very helpful, extremely affordable for genetic cardiomyopathy patients. So, but in the meantime, ask your healthcare provider. Kathy, the second part of the question.
Yeah. So can you repeat the question, Jan?
Oh, sorry, I was just looking at the next question.
Uh-huh.
Let me look at this. Hang on one second.
I think you have to have genetic testing to enter
yes, you have to know your gene to participate. Sorry.
No. So the registry is targeting people who are likely to have a genetic cardiomyopathy. So if you have a genetic test that shows that you actually have a mutation that is associated with a cardiomyopathy, then of course you qualify for being in the registry. If you don't have a genetic test, but you do have a cardiomyopathy, or you come from a family where other members have a cardiomyopathy, if 2 of those family members are, well, let me back up. If one of those family members is a first-degree relative, like a brother, sister, parent, a child, then that qualifies you. Or if you have multiple other relatives that are not first degree, but other relatives beyond first degrees that have cardiomyopathy, then that's a family history that's very suspicious for a genetic reason. Okay, so you do qualify for entering into the registry if you have that kind of family history. So you do not need to have a genetic test or a report to enter the registry if you have a very suspicious family history.
Thank you for that clarification, Kathy. That's really important. Will people be paid for participating? No, they will not be paid for participating. Just want to reiterate that, so people are clear on that. Let's see. Dr. Denise Valenti asks, how does protected data work for those registrants having a rare gene that just the gene may identify them or their family?
And I can take a shot at that. So, great question. So how the registry works, and Kathy and Shauna, I'm the sales guy and you're the people that actually tell the truth. I'll give it a shot and then you correct me. So essentially in the registry, like, nobody just ever sees your information. So for instance, if you have a very rare disease like RBM20, right? And not a lot of people have it. You register for the registry, and a researcher or a pharma company for a natural history study clinical trial reaches out and says, I'm looking for RBM20 people that have this, this, and this. At that point, Shauna would notify you, run it past Kathy, and say, you match this criteria. This researcher is doing this research project, and or this pharma company is doing this clinical trial. Would you be interested in connecting with them? Only if and only when you expressly say, yes, I would like to be connected with them, will anybody ever see your information. So your information will never be seen by anybody, viewed by anybody, sent to anybody, unless you expressly consent on a case-by-case basis. Kathy, Shauna, did I answer that correctly?
Yeah, you answered that correctly. And the participant needs to, again, indicate to us in that opt-in list that you want us to do that matchmaking capability. So so that is correct.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So what happens if somebody's not very comfortable with accessing the internet or completing online surveys? Is phone support also available to complete this? That's a great question.
Shauna?
Yes, thank you. So yes, what I would recommend is using that patient questions at geneticcardiomyopathy.org email address and emailing us, and then we can reach out to you and see what we can work out to support you getting your information accurately represented and make sure that you understand everything, all the steps that you need to follow.
I'll just add that, you may, if you're not a real computer savvy person, you may need help actually accessing the registry and registering. But when it comes to actually you filling in your information, we can point you to how you access those surveys. But the surveys themselves are pretty simple for everybody. So, and we purposely designed the surveys to be very short and very specific, and not to be onerous to the participant. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for the participant to get essential information into the registry. So we can help guide you, but I think that, it's important for you to be able to put your own information in.
Excellent. I have another question sort of related to that, but this is a little different. I'm not on social media. Does signing up for the newsletter give me all the information I need? And yes, it does. And by attending tonight's webinar, you will be put on our newsletter list, and also you will get a copy of this webinar recording and a link to register in an email tomorrow that I will send out. So you don't have to be on social media to see what's going on and participate. You'll get updates via our newsletter on a monthly basis as well. Let's see. And just to reiterate, Rebecca asks, if you have a clinical diagnosis of cardiomyopathy, but to date genetic testing hasn't found a causative gene, are you still eligible to join the registry? Kathy.
Yeah, that's a good question. If you have other family members that have cardiomyopathy, then you have a suspicious family history that indicates you have a genetic disease. Now, if you don't have a suspicious family history, then you may not meet the criteria to enter into this particular registry. But we encourage people, let's say you do have a negative genetic, test. You should probably, and hopefully you receive this kind of counseling at some point in the future, depending upon how long ago your genetic testing was done. You should get that repeated, because we are identifying new variants or mutations all the time. And so that list of mutations that's associated with developing cardiomyopathy is constantly changing. It's getting larger, okay? So if you do get repeated genetic testing in the future, and that test shows positive for a disease-related gene, then you can enter into the registry, or like I said, if you have a positive family history, that's very suspicious for a genetic disease.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying all of that, Kathy. Super important. Also, I've had a number of people asking if this is a global registry, and yes, it is. We've had a number of people asking from Australia and from South Africa yes, this is a global registry, so please, you are certainly welcome to go ahead and join the registry if you meet the criteria to participate.
Yeah, and real quick, one thing, thanks, Jan. One thing that we also want to say is that one of our goals also is to work with other registries around the world. I mean, we don't want to do this global domination. There's a great registry, the James Ware from Imperial College runs cardiomyopathy UK is very good. You know, we want to partner with them in the future, be able to pass data back and forth and work with. So the idea is with other registries, whether it's an academic researcher, whether it's like I talk about what they have in the UK, we want to be able to partner with them. But we also would love for people around the world to register with us. You also can register in different registries if you so choose. So I would recommend, if you really are interested in helping, you register in different registries, but we're happy to have anybody around the world, as Jan said, participate.
Yeah. There can be different purposes for different registries. I mean, we all kind of, for genetic cardiomyopathies, we all operate in the same domain, but we may have very specific different kinds of purposes. So it doesn't hurt to register in multiple registries if you're interested.
This is a great question. Sarah asks, how do you anticipate researchers or research sponsors utilizing this data outside of recruitment for trials? Would there be options to see things such as where patients are located and where they seek medical care for trial site selection?
Betsy, you want to take this or?
Well, once we start collecting data, we will be able to get in, we meaning the certified GCR staff, will be able to get into the database and try to analyze the data. And we will be able to, perhaps look at geographic populations of people, let's say with DCM, we can make graphs, we can make charts, and we can share that with the participants of the registry. So that's, all the data that we're looking at, and we can analyze it in any way possible that we choose to. So that is a possibility. Yes.
Yeah, and we want academic researchers to be able to access this, for research studies. Pharma, biotech can use this for creating and identifying people for patient advisory boards when they're very early on in the research. Many of these companies want patients to help guide them and to better understand the disease, understand what's important to patients. Natural history studies and clinical trials. So there's lots of ways that academic researchers in pharma can actually use this data to further the science and to create therapies.
Excellent. Thank you. And several people have asked how to join the registry. And again, at the end, we'll show another slide with a QR code as well. But basically, you can go to geneticcardiomyopathy.org is the website. And at the top right, there's a clear button that says join the registry. Just click on that and it'll walk you through. This is a great question. So the fact that this is GCAC is under the DCM Foundation. A person had a question, I don't have DCM, so why would I want more information about studies from the DCM Foundation? Greg, great question.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So as I mentioned before on the slides, when we look at genetic cardiomyopathy, you really have to, you saw how the genes, could when they mutate and cause disease, lots of times a certain gene can cause arrhythmias, it can cause dilated, it can cause hypertrophic, and even the different sub areas of cardiomyopathy. So it's really important that, if you have lamin A gene, like Shauna and I do, you can cause arrhythmias, it can cause limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, and it can cause dilated cardiomyopathy. So it's important that, and I think what's going to happen in genetic cardiomyopathy, we've historically said HCM, DCM, ACM, LVNC restrictor, but when we look at genetic cardiomyopathy moving forward, how this is going to be identified, I was actually talking to a researcher today about this. It's going to be lamin A genetic cardiomyopathy. It's going to be DSP. DSP can be dilated cardiomyopathy. It can be ACM, arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy. So moving forward, we're gonna work with anybody with a genetic cardiomyopathy. We have partners that represent sort of the subgroups like DCM. We're working with them to partner so that we can share equally in this with them. But yes, it's open to anybody with genetic cardiomyopathy.
And the DCM Foundation is serving as the sponsoring organization for this registry in partnership with GCAC, which is a consortium of other patient advocacy organizations who represent different kinds of cardiomyopathies. So that's the only connection.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, both of you. There's a quick question here. Kelly asks, will you be able to connect people to trials where companies offer reimbursement for travel and costs? You know, many of these companies that we've dealt with do offer travel reimbursement and cost reimbursement, but it all depends on the unique clinical trial. Greg, do you want to add anything specific to that?
Yeah, so I would be, if you're genetic cardiomyopathy and somebody has a clinical trial, I would be surprised if they didn't offer reimbursement for travel and costs. Not guaranteeing it every single time, but what we're seeing is that the numbers are so small and it's so hard to find people that that there would be most times reimbursement for this.
Yeah, and I'll just add one other thing is that again, if you've opted into that kind of matchmaking service, and again, we will reach out to the participant, let them know that they've matched with a particular researcher, and then the participant, decides whether or not they want to participate in that research. That may be one of the factors that's important to a participant. And, if a researcher doesn't offer that, for instance. So, it's up to the participant as to what they want to do and the criteria that they're choosing to work with a researcher.
Excellent. A couple questions here about if it's going to be available, if the registry is going to be available in Portuguese or other languages. The next language that we're considering, and it would probably be in about 6 months' time, would be Spanish. And so Portuguese is not on the horizon for this year, but in future years, depends on what the need is and so forth. But the next iteration will be made available in Spanish, hopefully the second half of this year. So thank you for the question.
But this presentation will be posted on YouTube, which then should be able to be translated into Portuguese.
That's absolutely true. That's correct, yes. And then, sorry if I misunderstood that question. How often should you get genetic testing? Again, Kathy, can you just reiterate, if somebody had their last test in July of 2020, how often should that person be retested?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't think there's a real definite answer to this, but I think a lot of genetic counselors would recommend probably in the range of 3 to 5 years, because that's giving enough time for, again, new discoveries and research to be reflected in the type of genetic testing that's being done. So, that's what I would say, approximately 3 to 5 years.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you all for all of these amazing patient questions. There's tremendous interest. I'm going to provide additional information in a moment here to, again, go back and be able to find where to register. So thank you to all of our speakers, Greg, Kathy, Shauna. Thank you to Justine behind the scenes helping with the technology. We have thank yous coming in and so forth. So any additional questions, please send them to patientquestions@geneticcardiomyopathy.org. Let's go back to the deck and wrap up for a few minutes here. We're just a little bit after the hour. Thank you, Justine. Again, as always, we would like to thank our generous sponsors, all of the logos and names you see here. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do all the amazing work we do. And they're doing amazing work as well. These teams have really great people doing really great work. So thank you to all of them. Next slide. So again, watch for a follow-up email tomorrow, including a recording of tonight's webinar. And again, you can then watch that recording in any language. So if you go into YouTube, it'll have instructions about how to translate it into a specific language. For language conversion questions, if someone has a question about that, please email info@dcmfoundation.org, and I'll help you walk through that. Also, a registration link will be included, obviously, to join the registry. Next slide. And if you prefer, you can take your phone camera and point it at the QR code, and it'll pop up a link, and that link will take you directly to join the registry. So any which way, there are going to be lots of ways to join the registry, whether you see it on social media or through our newsletters or the follow-up email and so forth. But please spread the word to your family members as well, or in other groups on social media that are appropriate to share the information. I also just want to let everyone know that this is the last webinar I will be doing for the DCM Foundation, sadly. I'm going to be moving on to do other advocacy work in another area. But I just want to thank the DCM Foundation for this great privilege and honor to have helped grow and reach out to so many people and provide help and education and support for not only DCM patients, but also genetic cardiomyopathy patients through GCAC. So it's really been fantastic.
And Jan, real quick, we would love to thank you. I personally, Jan and I worked in a different organization before, and we needed help. And I said, Jan, can you help us? And it's been 4.5 years. You've done a wonderful and amazing job. We could have done it without you. I am personally indebted to you forever, and I know everybody and all the patients and the board is indebted to you. Thank you so much. And Jane is moving on to be able to work in a disease state that affects her family, and I hope that you get the same satisfaction that I get helping my family and people with the disease. So thank you so much. We're going to miss you dearly. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. You're going to make me choke up. Thank you so much. No, it's
Yes.
been my pleasure. And I wish you all the best. And it's really been an incredible journey. And I know it will continue on. There are great people behind the scenes making all this happen. And so there is no webinar in February, but there will be a webinar in March. And you will see Greg again on that webinar. And so stay tuned for information about that. And in the meantime, stay safe and be well. And again, if you have questions, please reach out, patient questions at geneticcardiomyopathy.org. Shauna is ready and able to help answer your questions. And so we'll hope that you can participate. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.